So you've got to listen to yourself. Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Corporal Jeanette McNeely. This evening we're honoured to welcome Mr. Filippo Leonardo on behalf of the Ambassador of Italy to Australia and Colonel Salvatore Ciccone, Embassy of Italy Defence Attaché. All visitors who are here are commemorating the Italian National Unity Day and Armed Forces Day. We're also honoured to welcome Her Excellency, Mrs. Nenita Barbulescu, Ambassador of Romania to Australia and Dean of the Diplomatic Corps. Vice Admiral Michael Noonan, Chief of Navy, and on this occasion also representing the Chief of the Defence Forces of Australia. Air Vice Marshal Stephen Meredith, representing the Chief of the Royal Australian Air Force, and Brigadier David Kelly, Chief of Staff Army Headquarters, representing the Chief of the Australian Army. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. And during this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, I invite you all to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Lance Corporal John Arthur Fallon. John Fallon was born in 1894 in Wage in Western Australia, the son of Reginald and Agnes Fallon. Known as Jack, he attended school in the district and became a farm labourer and boundary rider. In February 1916, Fallon volunteered to enlist in the Australian Imperial Force. He trained for a brief time in Australia before embarking on the transport ship Shropshire at Fremantle at the end of March. After arriving in England, he continued his training and sailed for France in July 1916. There, he joined his unit, the 28th Australian Infantry Battalion. Jack Fallon's war experience was marked by sickness. In October 1916, he fell ill and was evacuated to hospital in England with pleurisy. During the winter months, he became severely ill with bronchitis, and he spent January and February recuperating. He returned to the 28th Battalion in March 1917, but in May had another stint in hospital in France. Fallon was, however, showing promise as a soldier, and on returning to his unit, he was promoted to the rank of Lance Corporal. When a superior was wounded in action, he was temporarily made corporal. At this time, the British commander's focus shifted away from the Somme River north to the Belgian town of Ypres. The 28th Battalion took part in the fighting that became known as the Third Battle of Ypres in late 1917. During the successful capture of Britzinder Ridge in early October, Fallon was wounded in action. He was evacuated to England to recover and reverted to his rank of Lance Corporal. Whilst in England, he suffered further illness, including trench fever and influenza. He returned to his unit in July 1918. By this point, the momentum of a German offensive earlier in the year had waned, and the British, French and their allies had begun their own counterattack. The Australian infantry units on the Western Front had been organised into the Australian Corps. In August 1918, this formation joined Canadian forces to form the spearhead of a British assault, pushing out of the railway hub of Amiens in northern France. On the 11th of August 1918, Fallon was in charge of a Lewis gun section at the front line near the village of Framilier when he was hit by enemy machine gun fire. He was taken to a nearby field ambulance but died of his wounds shortly afterwards. He was 24 years old. Fallon was initially buried near where he fell, but after the war, his remains were reburied at Villa Bretonneux Cemetery amongst more than 2,000 British and Dominion soldiers. One of Fallon's comrades from the 28th Battalion wrote to Reginald, Jack's father, to inform him of his son's death. He wrote, "Jack and I had been together for quite a long time, and I felt it deeply when told that he had gone. It was almost like losing a brother." Jack's older brother Vernon also served in the AIF, having joined the 16th Battalion in early 1916. In April 1917, his unit went into battle to capture the German-occupied village of Bullecourt. The attack was a disastrous failure for the British forces, and Vernon was one of nearly 1,200 Australians taken prisoner by the Germans. Vernon did not regain his freedom until the end of the war, arriving home in Western Australia in April 1919. Lance Corporal John Arthur Fallon is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst more than 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today besides the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lance Corporal John Arthur Fallon, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.